Hi, Trisha Reed here, consciouslypresent.com, and today I want to talk with you about what to do when you find yourself constantly feeling like you did something wrong. When this happens, it does happen from time to time. Normally, whenever we think we might have said or done something wrong to upset somebody, but when this becomes something that is more chronic than frequent, it's time to really start observing what's going on. Not only within yourself, but also looking around and examining the people around you and even society as a whole and what's actually running society. Because there's a reason why more and more of us are feeling like we must have done something wrong or even like there's something inherently wrong with us. And in most cases, it actually isn't even true. But there's a reason why we're feeling that way. There's a reason why we are more and more of us starting to feel paranoid, attacked. So this goes to, well, as above, so below. It's not just a matter of programming in our families, where we are surrounded by people who may have emotionally unhealthy tendencies, programming. Where does the programming come from? Maybe we were made the scapegoat in our families. Did you realize that this is systemic? It's not just a matter of maybe being in a very unhealthy family situation where you've got a golden child who always gets all the praise and you're the black sheep or the scapegoat and you're the one who's always made wrong. The blame is always shifted to you for every little thing. They can never see anything you do right. They can never see what you do or how wonderful and brilliant you are because they have to give the praise to the golden child. I know that's a very simplistic way of putting it. It's always more complex than that. Well, almost always more complex than that. But where does this programming come from? How did people in general, how did human beings start treating their own children and their own family members in such inhumane ways? Where does the programming come from? If you look back at your ancestors, you might see, well, it was even harder and tougher for them. Like they were even meaner. Like they had to be, because of what they went through, depression, starvation, hard working conditions, hard living conditions. And maybe our family was better in some ways than maybe our ancestors were. But if you go back through your family line, eventually you got to go back to where humanity started. Where did humanity start? Where did we begin? Why is that information hidden from us? Why are we told a story about Adam and Eve? When you go through and actually research our history, you find out that everything about what we've been told is a lie. It's been completely fabricated. Why would that be? Why would they want to hide our true history from us? And these are things that it's important to start questioning, because as you go through, you start to realize who and what you actually are, what's been hidden from us, what has been suppressed, and the reasons why. In a family situation, let's use this for as example, in a family situation where let's say you have a sibling who is incredibly envious of you, and this sibling wants to take you down. Because this sibling has some programming that says, I'm not enough. I'll never be as good as my sister, for example. And so the sibling starts trying to copy you, and they can never measure up because they don't know how to find out who they are. And it's not their fault because they weren't taught how to look at themselves and see who they are. Most of us got punished in our toddler years, for example, for saying no to what we don't want, when we didn't want to obey, when we wanted to explore, or when we expressed anger. Some of us got our mouths washed out with soap, some of us got beaten because parents didn't know that what they call is the terrible twos is actually a very normal, necessary, critical part of our self-discovery and self-development. It's where we learn how to figure out what we want and go for it. It's where we learn how to express. This is why we have tantrums, because the nervous system isn't developed yet. It needs to discharge that emotional energy. And when your brain and nervous system aren't developed yet enough to have tools that adults have to regulate the nervous system and discharge, what does a toddler have? It has tantrums. It should never be punished for that. It needs to be allowed to have that discharge. But if our parents didn't know that, then we got punished and controlled. And we got taught how to people please. We got taught how to take care of the parents' needs instead of our own. And this becomes our programming. This becomes a pattern that we live throughout life until we figure this out and finally go through our terrible twos when maybe we're in our 40s. And maybe we have a lifetime of nervous system dysregulation that we have to learn how to regulate and discharge the energies. So getting back to the sibling who's envious of you and they try to copy you, they feel like they can never measure up. If this sibling is jealous, they'll feel sad and they'll feel that jealousy of you. They'll feel sad like they're never going to measure up, and so they might always play the victim because their needs aren't being met. They're not being seen or heard, and they're putting themselves down until one day they realize, wait a minute, I actually don't want to do what my sibling does. I actually would rather do this, and then that sibling can start developing their own interests and hobbies and passions. But if that sibling is envious rather than jealous, then that sibling might start to sabotage you, try to take you down, might even wish you didn't ever exist, might even wish you had never been born, and make that known and become controlling and narcissistic and very abusive to you in the family system. That sibling might then learn how to draw your other siblings in to triangulate against you or to manipulate one parent or the other against you, to always get you in trouble, make you wrong, make you guilty, make you crazy by gaslighting you. And so this becomes your programming, living in such a hostile family environment. So again, if we take the as above, so below principle, and we start looking beyond the nuclear family that we grew up in to see how this is systemic, you might notice that you make friends or you engage in a relationship with a partner who also behaves this way, makes you wrong, shifts the blame onto you for everything, makes you guilty, gaslights you, turns your support system, your family and friends against you, isolates you, controls you, censors you, has an agenda not to hear you, so that no matter what you say, you're wrong. Bring this even farther out to a broader perspective. You look at how things go in social media, in the workplace, church, corporations, the governments, and you start to wonder, where did this begin? Where did this all begin? Where did this inhumane treatment begin? Eventually, you start to realize that inhumane behavior isn't human. And you start to maybe question, who runs these corporations? Who runs social media? Who actually runs the government? What actually runs these things? And when you get to that point, you begin to realize that it all stems from envy. That humanity as a whole is being targeted, warred against, and humanity isn't even allowed to know unless they figure it out. Humanity being blamed, made wrong, made evil, when we're not. So we have to start questioning everything. Is this belief about myself even true? Is there something inherently wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? Is it wrong for me to speak my truth? Is it wrong for me to express my feelings? Is it wrong for me to have an opinion? Is it wrong for anybody else to have an opinion? Who's trying to control everyone, right down to our thoughts and feelings? Who is it that is insisting that we all have to agree with what we don't even agree with? And if you don't, then you're wrong? That's insane. So what to do when you've got this constant feeling like you've done something wrong is to just step back and observe. Observe the people around you. Observe the social media environment that you're in. Observe who's running that. Observe who's trying to stuff a narrative down your throat that they're trying to force you to agree with. Observe your own family structure from when you were growing up. And was there somebody in your family who conditioned you into feeling like you were always wrong or never enough? And those running the show and making war on humanity, they're coming from a place of envy, because humanity is that special, because we are divine, because we are beautiful. And they have none of that. At least they don't believe they do. And they had to compensate by trying to steal from us what we are and make it theirs, while hollowing us out, turning us into empty shells, trying to control us so that they could have what we are, so that they could have what we have. If they couldn't have it for themselves, then they were going to have it through us, by controlling us. And it really comes from an even deeper place of toxic shame. The belief in inadequacy, that I am never enough. And when you can't work through those beliefs, and when you can't tolerate feeling that feeling of toxic shame and inadequacy, You compensate. You bury it deep, pretend it doesn't exist, and you tear others down so you can feel better about yourself. And this is what is being done to humanity as a whole. So, the first thing to do when you feel like you've done something wrong is to step back and observe and do an honest assessment. Did I do something wrong? Did I do something that I should maybe apologize for or talk to this person about? It's never a bad idea if you are dealing with a friend or a partner to ask, are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong? It's good to come to mutual understanding and to communicate, because we have this tendency to make up stories in our head about what somebody else did and why they did it rather than to just ask them. But when you find that this is a pattern, that the person or the government or a corporation or whatever the case is, that they won't hear you and that they punish you in some way, make you wrong for asking, make you wrong for having an opinion or feelings, or even existing, or try to tax you for breathing, carbon tax, or try to censor you for expressing your viewpoint, try to shut you up, try to shut you down. This is when you really need to step back and observe and realize that you're not crazy, you're being gaslit, you're being programmed and conditioned to be the scapegoat because they have beliefs in karma and they believe that they let themselves off the karmic hook by making you the scapegoat or making humanity in general the scapegoat. So that's the first step. Just detach from the story in your mind and observe. Observe yourself. Observe what you're feeling in your body. What do I feel like in my body when I feel like I've done something wrong, or I feel like somebody thinks I'm guilty or somebody might be mad at me? What does that feel like in my body? Where do I feel it? Write that down. And what do I do? What do I tend to want to do when I feel like I've done something wrong or somebody thinks I did something wrong? How do I tend to deal with that? What do I do? Do I tend to go find some junk food to eat? Do I binge watch a show? Do I play a video game? Do I read a book? Do I escape? Do I go numb? Do I drink? What do I do? What do I want to do? Do I want to jump up and go full on and do something to make them happy? Do I try to make sure they're not mad at me? Do I confront them? Do I avoid confrontation? What do I do? What do I tend to do? And then write that down. It's good to keep a journal of these things because it is a journey into self-discovery, getting to know yourself, but it also helps you to know that you're not crazy, because you can go back in a journal and you can look through and you can spot your own patterns, and you can spot when you actually did or said something that upset somebody, or when you're dealing with a programmed person or whatever type of entity we're dealing with here, that they're the problem and not you. And this can help to give you a lot of relief, so you can maybe start to let go of that chronic tightness in your chest, the chronic anxiety, feeling like you're walking on eggshells, that it's okay to breathe, it's okay to take up space, it's okay to be who you are. Because when you know that you're not the problem, and you start recognizing what's actually going on, it's okay to tend to your own needs. It doesn't make you selfish. Self-care isn't selfish. And no is a complete sentence that requires no explanation. So that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. And I'll be back to talk more about these things in future videos. For now, if you are interested in learning more about how to go in and build capacity to feel the uncomfortable feelings in your body and learn more how to discover you and be yourself, check out my course at consciouslypresent.com, and I will be back to talk with you more later.